Today, we've got a truly powerful story for you. It's about a woman who, at 62 years old, decided to grab her independence with both hands. And it all started because of a weekly magazine she couldn't even read. So it all kicks off with this simple weekly ritual. You've got a grandmother who is just completely captivated by a story being published piece by piece in a magazine. The only catch? She couldn't read a single word of it herself.
But that feeling, of having to rely on someone else to connect with this story she loved, well, it would soon lead her to a decision that would absolutely redefine her life, at an age when most of us think our learning days are pretty much over.
So let's set the scene. Our story begins in a small village, where life just moves at a different rhythm. And here, stories aren't just things you read alone. They're shared experiences, passed from one person to the next.
Okay, so let's meet our main character, Krishtaka. She's 62, lives in a village in North Karnataka, and she never went to school, so she's illiterate. But her absolute passion, the thing she looks forward to most, is listening to a serialized novel called Kashi Yatre. It's about an old woman who wants to visit the holy city of Kashi, and Krishtaka felt this incredibly deep connection to the character. For her, this story was everything.
And this was their routine. Every single Wednesday, her 12-year-old granddaughter would sit down with her and read the latest installment out loud from the magazine. And Krishtaka would just hang on every word, memorizing the story, totally absorbed, and, of course, completely dependent on the voice of that little girl.
But then, one week, that voice is gone. The story falls silent, and it's in that silence that Krishtaka is forced to confront a feeling she just can't ignore anymore. What happened was, her granddaughter had to leave the village for a week to go to a wedding. And right on schedule, the new issue of the magazine arrives. But this time, there's no one there to read it to her. The next chapter of her favorite story is right there in her hands, but it's completely locked away on the page. When her granddaughter finally came back, she found Krishtaka in tears, and this is what she told her. Those two words, helpless and dependent, just crashed down on her. She realized that even with a good life, she was missing this fundamental piece of her own independence. And this part of the story is just so vivid. It wasn't just that she was sad. The source describes her literally running her hands over the pages, over the pictures, and the words, almost as if she could pull the story out through sheer force of will. It's such a powerful image of her desperation and the real pain of her limitation.
Okay, so this is the turning point. It's right here, in this moment of feeling so vulnerable, that an incredible, life-changing decision is made. This was never just about a magazine story. This was about taking back her independence.
62. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's an age where a lot of people might think, nope, too late for me to learn something brand new like that.
But Krishtaka wasn't most people. Her determination just completely defied that idea. She looked at her granddaughter and said it plain and simple. There is no age limit for learning. This is the moment she turns that despair into pure action.
And look, this wasn't just some vague promise to herself. No, she set a real quest. She was going to learn the entire Kannada alphabet, and she gave herself a very specific and actually very symbolic deadline, the Dasara festival. That's a time that honors Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge. Her goal was to be able to read a novel all by herself by that exact day. And just like that, the roles completely reverse. The 12-year-old granddaughter becomes the teacher, and the 62-year-old grandmother becomes her most dedicated student. And Krishtaka wasn't just a willing student, she was a phenomenal one. She poured every ounce of her being into this. The same intense focus she used to use for listening to the story, she now applied it to learning. She worked so hard, doing every single piece of homework, reading, repeating, writing, reciting. Her young teacher was just in awe of her dedication. And you know what? She did it. She absolutely crushed her goal. By the deadline she set for herself that day of the Saraswati Puja, Krishtaka could read, confidently, all by herself. The silence of the page had finally been broken. By her.
But learning to read, that's actually not the end of the story. The most powerful moment is still to come. It's a moment that kind of redefines tradition and shows us what this journey was really all about.
So, on that festival day, with all the prayers happening, Krishtaka calls her little granddaughter over, and then she does something that just completely shocks the young girl. She bends down to touch her feet. Now, to really get how huge this was,
You have to understand the culture here. Traditionally, it's always the young person who touches the feet of an elder as a sign of deep respect. So what Krishtaka did here was flip that entire tradition on its head. In that moment, she wasn't acting like a grandmother. She was a student, honoring her guru, her teacher.
This gesture, it was about something so much deeper than just learning the alphabet. It was a profound thank you for the gift of independence. Her granddaughter didn't just teach her how to read words. She freed her from that awful, painful feeling of being helpless. And what was the very first thing she did with this newfound freedom? Well, her granddaughter gave her a gift, a copy of the Kashi Yatra novel. Krishtaka took that book, and all by herself, she read the title out loud. The whole journey, which started in dependency, came full circle in this one perfect, triumphant moment.
You know, Krishtaka's story is such a beautiful reminder that a real teacher can show up in any form, at any age, sometimes even as a 12-year-old kid. It kind of makes you think, doesn't it? Who has been the most unexpected teacher in your own life?